Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Alisha Delancey. I'm a partner here at Fourlane, and I'm super excited to talk to you today about chart of accounts setup in QuickBooks Enterprise. Okay, so today, chart of account setup. My slide deck's not that beefy, but we're going to talk about account types, sub accounts, and then QuickBooks generated accounts, just some of the things that we're going to discuss. I am going to go ahead and dive right into QuickBooks because really that's the most important part and what we want to learn about today. So if anyone has any questions, I want to just make sure I take a second early on to let you know, ask questions. I've got it open so that I can answer those, make sure that, you know, if I have to go back and address, I totally will, but I do want to make sure that I can answer any questions that anybody has today. Okay, so diving into our chart of accounts. Before we go look at our chart of accounts, we have a whole nother video out there on company preferences, but I know I've had some clients ask me, how do you turn on and off certain things? So I wanted to open up company preferences, go to accounting, and just show this section right here. You can use account numbers by selecting this box or unselecting so that you don't have account numbers. And then requiring accounts, this is a default. It's always typically selected, but that is requiring accounts to be on your transactions. Okay, so going to our chart of accounts. This is a sample file, so it's got a bunch of accounts in there already set up that we're gonna talk about today, but when I go in and create a new account, this is where you can find the QuickBooks already set up and selected account types, right? So you've got your income, your expense, your fixed assets, bank loan, credit card equity, and sometimes I have clients that they will forget about this whole drop-down menu. So these are your other account types that are also very, very important. So just because you don't see them on the initial screen, go ahead and make sure that you select this drop-down so you can see and open it up. Before I go further, I do want to make sure I share a couple of things that some clients have asked me over the years. So I've had, a client ask, well, I don't like these account types. I want to rename them what I want to use. Well, that's not how QuickBooks works. So you do have to use the ones that are already predefined. So behind the scenes in the database, right? When we select one of these account types, it is telling QuickBooks to handle a particular way. So these account types are the ones that you have to select in order to start setting up your chart of accounts. Okay. So today, first thing I want to do is go in and we're going to select a bank account. Bank accounts are typically first on our balance sheet, and so want to go over this with you first. So we have the ability to enter in our bank account number. The number field and the account name field are two different fields in QuickBooks. So we can have our number, then the name. You do not have to put, I've seen, right? Some people put the number in the name field. So remember, these two can be completely separate. It's two separate fields And so you actually want to do it that way. And so this is going to be our bank account that we're going to set up today. One of the biggest things that I think a lot of people aren't aware of when they're new to QuickBooks is you have the ability to have sub accounts. And so you can create what I like to call a parent account. And then underneath it, you'll start building your sub account. So let's just say we're going to create sub accounts under our company checking. So this bank account test 1, that is going to be a sub of our parent company checking account. Your description, it can be something different, but sometimes, most of the time, people will either leave it blank or have it be the same exact as what our account name is. Now, when we are setting up bank accounts, we have the ability to enter in our bank account number, our routing number. We also have the ability to set up bank feeds. We have a whole another video on that. It's a lot of detail, but bank feeds is something that you can set up as well in QuickBooks and have that tied to an account. You also can identify your tax line mapping. And so this is something that will allow when you have connected for tax purposes, reporting purposes, and so you can use that as well. Opening balance, you do have the ability to enter here your opening balance for like your bank account. Typically, that's not how we would set up a client's beginning balance. So if you ever tried to reconcile a bank account with a lump sum beginning balance of $25,000, everybody probably that's attempted that also has encountered, well, it'd be great if all $25,000 cleared the bank at the same time. But that's not really how the real world works all the time, right? So this is where we would recommend typically entering in those transactions that make up the beginning balance so you can properly reconcile. However, capabilities are here if you do need to do that. Okay, you can set up so that QuickBooks will remind you to order checks when you reach a particular check number. So if I get to 5,000, I need you to remind me to reorder the checks, please. And thank you. And then if you want to order checks from QuickBooks, you can do that as well by checking here. Okay, so now we've gone in and we've added that. I was telling you guys about the bank feeds, which is something that once you enter a bank account, you'll get this window that will pop up. You have that ability to set that up. But again, not something we're going to be able to cover here and is in a different video. So now what you'll see is that we have the parent company checking account and our sub bank account underneath it. Now, again, just examples that I want to be able to show you. And so this is how you would be able to set that up. You also can remove, if we want to edit an account and we want to disconnect the parent sub relationship, maybe we made a mistake. You can easily go in and edit, unselect, and save and close. And now we've got our account set up. Okay, so let's kind of go over setting up an expense account. An expense account is very similar to how we set up the bank account, but you see less fields here. And so we have the ability to enter in our number, our name, our sub account, Now, in the preferences in this company file in 2024, we have the ability so that we can assign classes to accounts. Now, this is a company preference that has been turned on, so it's not a standard default. If you do not have this preference turned on, you will not see this class as an option, okay? We also didn't see that on the balance sheet accounts because that is not where you are doing class tracking on the balance sheet. You would do that on the P&L, okay? And so you can select your class to the account level. You also have your tax line mappings here so that, again, for tax purposes, reporting purposes, you can have that properly set up. Okay. So how do we see, right, if we've inactivated accounts? So I can come in, and if I want to inactivate an account and no longer use it, I can right click, I can say edit, or I can say make account inactive. If I make that account inactive, now at the very bottom of this screen, I now see include inactive. These are my inactive accounts, and I want to be able to select that so that now I can see my inactive accounts. That is designated by this X here. If I did not mean to X and make that inactive, I can easily come in and click on the X, and now that account has no longer been made active. So super easy to be able to activate and inactivate, reactivate, all those things, okay? So if I wanted to go and run an account listing, so I have my account listing pulled up, and I can see I've got my balance total, I've got my account, my type, my account number, if I'm using that, and then my tax line. One of the things that over the years I have, had the fun time of trying to work and manipulate in Excel is this little character, and I'm going to blow this up so that it's a little bit bigger for you guys, hopefully, and y'all can see it. But this character that Excel doesn't really recognize, right? And so if you're ever trying to run reports or work with your chart of accounts in Excel, remember if you've got account numbers, you want to include this column here. I know it's a little much for what we're doing today, but this right here won't help you much. Okay, so you have the ability to take this report and you can export this to Excel here, and you could do cleanup, you could do all kinds of things and set it up. All right, so let's talk about if I am doing certain things. So system generated QuickBooks Enterprise accounts, default accounts. So if we turn on, for example, inventory, if I'm turning on inventory, QuickBooks is automatically going to create a default inventory account. It's also going to create a cost of goods sold default account for me in my chart of accounts. And so that account is something that I cannot remove. I can't delete it. It will not let me. Sure that there's some users out there that have struggled with, I don't want that system default account number to be in my chart of accounts because That's not the sequence that I want, right? So those system default accounts you got to play with, right? We have to play nice with those. And so a lot of times, if we don't like the naming, we don't like the numbering, I can't get rid of them, but what we can do is we can edit the account number and the account name so that it fits in our naming scheme, it fits in our sequence, and we will be able to have a nice, pretty clean chart of accounts that we can use moving forward. Okay. So you would just edit. If I wanted to make this 505, cost of goods sold new, I have no issues with being able to save that, even though it's a system generated account. All right, just a quick reminder, if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to go ahead and put those questions in the questions box. I will get to them as soon and quickly as I can. I have a couple more things that we want to go over. We're going to try to finish on time today, but those system generated accounts, definitely something that we want to make sure that everyone knows how to deal with. I've had a lot of those questions over the years. Okay, another big question that I get. I need 4 accounts receivable accounts, right? And I need, accounts receivable allowance for doubtful. I need accounts receivable trade. I need just accounts receivable intercompany maybe. One time I had every single customer that a client had, they created an accounts receivable account for them. So it just went on forever and ever and ever, right? And so it was really hard to manage that way. So we definitely don't recommend that. Now, we recommend just having one AR account and run your subledger reports to get data from, right? But I want to make sure I'm addressing things that definitely have come up more than once over the years, and trying to ensure we're addressing things that maybe users are experiencing. So let's just say, we want to have a second accounts receivable account. You can create more than one AR account. Well, I also have to have a unique account number. So I accidentally had put 1205, which is already in the chart of accounts. So I got a pop-up message. So I'm putting 1205.5 so I can save this. Okay, so what are some things that QuickBooks won't let me do? It won't let me have more than one account with the same number. It also won't let me have an account name that's duplicate, right? So accounts receivable, I can't have 2 that are listed exactly the same. I have to make it unique, okay? So I have 2 accounts receivable accounts here. And if I was to operate this way, right, it would be where I would have to select which accounts receivable on every single transaction. And so if you can imagine, if we have a very high level of high volume, right, of invoices, credit memos, payments, all of those things, it would be a lot to keep up with. So we recommend doing one AR, one AP, and then using your reports so that you can manage, right? You definitely cannot change. So like example of the allowance for doubtful account, instead of creating that as an accounts receivable, you could set that up as an other current asset, which is a contra to your accounts receivable. So you have the ability to still have it documented, but it is not a second AR account, okay? You wouldn't be able, right, to go in and change transactions that are in, like on this invoice. If I had selected my second AR account, I couldn't then just change this to like an other current asset, right? It has to be an accounts receivable account type. So there's some system things that we wouldn't be able to do, but we could always help with that. I have a quick question real fast that came up. We want to export the chart of accounts in a date range. Can that happen? So this question is a really good question. And I think that what I would potentially ask back is, are we trying to get data, like transactional detail, from the chart of accounts, or, right, like why is it just a specific date range for the chart of accounts? And I ask that because typically your accounts would, chart of accounts would be for all time, if that makes sense, unless potentially we did something along the lines of like, you know, stopped using a naming scheme and then we started using a complete different one. Maybe I could think of that. But there's not a report that basically is like, okay, let's look at, you know, my account list from this date to this date, but there's alternative reports that you can get with things like account balances for a particular time that would show you. So I will go create this. So if I wanted to, now this is a sample file, so not a ton of data, and I'm in the future, but if my date range, right, is set, and I want to be able to see accounts that have, maybe they have balances during this period. So what I did was I clicked on advanced and I said non-zeros. I'm gonna say okay. And I also displayed my rows by account. And then I'm going to go to my filters and I'm going to change it from income and expense accounts to all accounts. And so this could potentially give you what you want. So it's maybe identifying what we're looking for, and then how do we go build that for you and then use this, okay? If that doesn't help answer your question and we need to talk more, feel free to email me and I'd be happy to help you know, get what you're looking for out of QuickBooks. And then another question that I have is, what do I select for the account number to show in the reports? Great question. I'm gonna go back real fast to our preferences. So quick reminder, I'm using my account numbers, so that's got to be selected. And then if I'm using my account numbers, there's this reports and graphs preference, right, at the company level. And so your reports, right, there's settings here that we can just show name, we, right, can show those things. And so we have the ability to then come here and to be able to see if we want just the name or we want the number and the name. Now, also, Anthony, just to make sure when we are setting up our chart of accounts, we also have to use the right fields as well in order for that to show. So if you still have any questions and you want to look at that with me and look at your preferences, I'm happy to look at that with you, but that's a super great questions that both came through. Okay, so reporting capabilities and then exporting, you can, just the normal way to export. We also have some reports in your accounting and taxes, just kind of standard canned reports where you can do things like transaction list by date. You can also do potentially, if we wanted to get like the general ledger or transaction detailed by account. So a lot of things like that, and just select the things that we're looking for, okay? All right, so super great questions. I did also want to show one other thing on what I think is great for the chart of accounts and doing drill downs and things like that. So if I have, I'm just gonna go into like an expense. So we see on our balance sheet account, right, in our chart of account window, we see our balances. In the P&L, in our chart of account window, we have no balances. And so let's just say if I was going to go into, might not have anything in here, but we're gonna use this one, dues and subscriptions as an example. And so if I right click, I have the ability to do a quick report. My quick report is something that is going to show me the account information for my date range on that account and just that account only. It's not going to be where I have to go to the balance sheet or the P&L and then do a drill down. So the quick report is something that you can easily get to find account level information. I had one more question before we wrap things up today. Is this different from QuickBooks Online? QuickBooks Enterprise is 100% different than QuickBooks Online. And so we do also have some videos out with QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Enterprise. Today, we're focused on QuickBooks Enterprise. And so completely different structure and the way that you set up reports and those things. Okay, great question as well. And thank you so much for joining us today. Hope that you can join us again next time.